Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison. I want to welcome you to day 15 of Humanity Rising. Every day since May 22nd, between 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock Central European time, we've gathered together people from all over the world to share their experiences of the current pandemic, look to the future and contemplate how we empower ourselves to shape a more sustainable and resilient world. And mostly to take counsel together as to how people of goodwill at this critical hour can enhance their strategic effectiveness in a way that can actually make a difference. As we look around the world today, it's full of chaos. How do we bring harmony? How does our vision of the future so inspire people that they take action for a positive new world? That's the central question that has galvanized Humanity Rising. I want to welcome everybody that is viewing us through Awake TV or the half a dozen other social media platforms that are live streaming our event. We are being viewed each day from 10 to 15,000 in number. And we're very pleased and very grateful that so many people in so many corners of the world are tuning in for this very important conversation. We started by listening to the voices of women. And for the first 10 days, we heard women visioning with each other about a post-pandemic world. This is the fifth day now where we are listening to the voices of youth. We wanted to start Humanity Rising with the voices of women and the voices of youth to emphasize our conviction that if the world is really going to seize the opportunity inherent in this pandemic crisis, there needs to be a radical empowerment of women in executive leadership and youth. It's worth noting that of the 7 countries that are doing the best in dealing with COVID-19, all 7 of those countries are led by women. Women in leadership makes a difference. Youth in leadership makes a difference. And I can't tell you how inspired I've been over the last 4 days listening to the young people and now going into the 5th day. And I thought it would be worth noting that some of the great revolutionaries of the last 100 years have started their careers when they were very, very young. I talked yesterday about Gandhi and Martin Luther King and Mandela. You know, Gandhi was only 25 years old, having just finished a law degree in London, and was called to South Africa to defend an Indian businessman who wanted to file a lawsuit against the South African government. And little Gandhi, slight in build, not very tall, went to South Africa, a country he'd never been to before, and took up the cause of social justice in South Africa with such clarity and emotional power that when he left some years later, South Africa had been brought to its knees simply by his youthful passion for justice. Martin Luther King was only 26, having just finished a PhD at Boston University, when he was drawn into the civil rights movement having spent his life in the South as a victim of civil rights abuses, but was not at all stable in some ways. Many people don't remember that Martin Luther King actually tried to commit suicide at one point. It happened when he was in his late teens. He snuck out to go to a party. And while he was at the party, his grandmother died and he wasn't there. And he was so distraught that in the weeks following, he jumped out of a second-story window of the home in which he was living and got pretty badly injured. But he persevered. And the heroism of Rosa Parks and other women in 1955 galvanized that young man to become who Martin Luther King eventually was to be. Mandela, he was born into nobility. He saw at a very early age the injustices of the colonial regimes in Southern Africa. And he was only 25 years old when he joined the ANC and immediately threw himself into revolutionary struggle, for which he went to prison, as you all know, for many, many years, and came out of prison to become president of a free South Africa. There are many other examples. Revolution is the fulcrum of the young. And whether it's the French Revolution or even the American Revolution, you know, Thomas Jefferson was only 32 years old when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. One thinks of Jesus even. He was only 30 years old. Alexander the Great was only 20 years old when he crossed the Hellespont and conquered all of Persia. Napoleon was named a general in the French Revolution when he was only 24. And you think very recently of Malala. Remember Malala? She was shot in Pakistan, organizing for young women to be able to go to school. She was shot when she was 15. Greta Thunberg, she's only 12. So as we hear from the voices of youth, let us remember that is through youth, by youth, that some of the most momentous events in all of human history have been transacted. And the waking up of youth to the critical sensitivities of social justice, of inhumanity, of how to make the world a better place. Once it's instilled in a young soul, the power that can be unleashed can change the world. So I just wanted to remind all of us of the power of youth as we begin today's session. And I'd like to now turn it over to Nora Salini, one of our 20-somethings here at Ubiquity University. She's our director of admissions. She's part of the coordinating team for our NextGen program, along with Raji Jayasinghe and Matt Robertson. So Nora, I welcome you to take the program from here.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. Thank you for your supporting words. I always love listening to you. And yeah, also really your support to our NextGen circle. It's been so important that you've been holding this space for us to really welcome all these amazing panelists. And today won't be any less than the days that we've had before. And so welcome everyone to the 4th day of NextGen Circle as part of the Humanity Rising Global Solutions Summit. My name is Nora, as Jim just mentioned, and it's really my pleasure to open today's session with my colleagues and friends, Matt and Raji from Ubiquity University. In a moment, we will introduce today's circle, which is on youth leadership in continental Africa during COVID-19. But first, a few announcements. So all sessions are recorded and you may access or share them afterwards through the Ubiverse. We will put a link on the chat as well, and also through Facebook, YouTube, or on a live TV. We will begin with a conversation among today's panelists before moving to the audience questions. And you may contribute your questions or comments in the chat, and we'll do really our best to address them. But before we start, we think it's really important to introduce our mission statement. And my dear colleague, Matt, will do this. I'll pass it over to you, Matt. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Nora. Yesterday, we had a fantastic session. As Jim mentioned, in many ways, today, the times are calling for us all to be revolutionaries in some ways. And yesterday, we heard from 4 incredible revolutionaries on the topic of how do we step up instead of shut down in times of crisis. Clover Hogan, founder of Force of Nature, Malati, co-founder of Bye Bye Plastic Bags, Alexandria, co-founder of US Youth Climate Strike, and Elizabeth, founder of the Green Generation Initiative, walked us through what it is like nowadays to be on the front lines and what role does direct action play in helping us build the movement and planet that we all want to live in. So that is a theme of direct action that we will continue as we move forward. And to that effect, we do, as Nora mentioned, feel it's important to speak a little bit about why youth, why now, why at the beginning of the summit, along the lines of Jim's outline. And so this is a statement that we've put together that is a work in progress. It's been co-created by all of those who have participated in the NextGen panels, as well as those of you who are watching us here today. So I will read this statement now, and we do invite your further feedback. The rising generation of decision makers and global citizens comes together with the shared understanding that our world is in deep crisis. We are the largest and most connected generation to ever exist, and we enter these conversations fully aware that our lives and those of our children hinge on the actions we all take today. We share the responsibility to identify and implement solutions. We recognize that real change starts with our daily thoughts, interactions, and choices, and that each one of us has a unique role to play in our unfolding story. Lasting and regenerative change can only manifest through our collective intelligence and radical collaboration. Collaboration that is built on a spirit of diversity, tolerance, open-heartedness, and trust. With recognition and respect for our ancestors, those who have come before, we represent current and future generations in how we live our lives today. We seek to empower each other to author the story we want to live. And we invoke creative solutions to innovate successfully for a more sustainable and resilient planetary society. So with those words, I invite us to take just a brief 10 to 15 seconds of silence to recognize the moment that we're in and the highlight of young leaders around the world working to make the world a better place. So please take 10 seconds of silence to be how you'd like. Thank you. It's an honor to be here with everyone. And before we open our panel, we'd like to start with an artist contribution. And so in order to introduce today's artist, I would like to pass this over to Raji Jayasinghe. Thanks so much, Raji. Over to you.
Thank you, Matt. Welcome, everybody. It's wonderful to be here. And I'm very excited to introduce today's artist segment. The reason why we've decided to do an artist segment every day in this Next Gen week is because we think art is extremely important and we hold it very dear. It's important in helping us to feel. It's important in helping us stay connected to our hearts and our true selves. And art can also lend us the power to be resilient and empathetic. And it also gives us the impetus to act. And so with that said, today's artist, I'm really excited to introduce you to all. He's a good friend of mine. His name is Arun, and he's the writer and director of several acclaimed plays here in Sri Lanka, including Pareya, Blowhards, Only Soldiers, and his most recent one, The One Who Loves You So, which actually won the 2018 Gratian Prize for Literature. Since returning to Sri Lanka in 2013, Arun worked with some of the same designers, producers, and actors to make work that confronts audiences with the thornier and messier aspects of modern life. His plays primarily touch on the intersections of gender, sexuality, queerness, and class in a myriad of different forms. As well as writing and creating original works, he has also worked extensively as a performer, notably in productions of Closer, Close to the Bone, Dear Children Sincerely, as well as the ITV drama Good Karma Hospital, and the title role in Hiran Balasuriya's short The Joyous Farmer, for which he received Best Actor at the Chicago Art House Film Festival. He currently resides in Colombo. I haven't seen him for a while due to curfew, and I hope I will get to see him in person soon. With that, Arun, I hand over to you, my friend.
Thank you, Raji. It's awful to hear your bio read to you. I'm just reading a piece from a larger play called Better Than Ever Before, which was a project where me and another writer, Alice Malseed, co-wrote pieces about that reflected about what we saw as a shared a shared makeup in life in Colombo and life in Belfast, both part of nations which had dealt with immense crises throughout the 80s and 90s and had come out of it, and what we saw as sort of a modern malaise. And it's a piece that I kind of keep revisiting. It's called I Look Out Here. I look out of here and I see me walking through the city, late to meet my friends. I look out of here and I see men and women and people of color, and I see no aged people. I see men going to work, men and women, different schedule than me, ants in a toy farm or slugs in a fish tank. I look out and I see men in Ubers or Pick-me's, and they have wives back home or second jobs or cars that stink of weed. I look out and I see men in the back seat staring at their screens or intellect deep in Ulysses. I look out and I see kids on skateboards, kids with spray paint, kids dressed in all black with booze and glue bags and knuckles and scars and a rawness lost with the on of a suit. I look out and I see the girls I love, the women powerful, them not complaining, the women, their bodies hunted by men full of desire for someone to replace their mother and listen to them go on about their latest era. I look out and I see men I've met in bars, men I have loved for 4 minutes, men I have loved until they've started talking, men who think I am waiting, men who can't talk, men who destabilize my chi, zen, chakra, flow, glow. I look out and I see men like ants that are dead. I see men I have slain, men I have followed on Instagram, men I have seen exiting church with their mothers, men I have seen on Tinder. I look up and I see blue, infinite blue, or a lingering empty grayness stretching for all my forevers and suffocating any hope of hope. I look up and I see Orion's belt, or what I think is that, or I see helicopters, buzzing noise, militaristic, hovering like bees, searching for pollen or criminals. I look out and I see platinum health clubs, I see golf courses, estate agent signs and their glossy, sleek windows promising us an elegantly decorated duplex apartment or a brand new one-bed service. This city's first luxury apartments right here in the core of this micro metropolis. You too can live like you're in any other city on the planet. I look out and I feel tiny. I feel like a shell in the sea, a grain of sand, a speck of dust, like I am inside someone's brain and the sky is jelly, or that I can see the Milky Way and I am galactic. I look out and I see a man in a work uniform throw himself in front of a Bentley. I see the driver exhale deeply, hands still on the still wheel. I see pedestrians, no, people, buying trainers and hand creams, and I see girls and their mothers having lunch. Or I see the potential for us to create new laws, for us and me to maintain old laws, to rejoin, remerge, remember the city as a place of no walls, no high up places, no invisible concrete border walls between countries, to remember the courts as a places of sense, to redefine justice, to re-elect good women and men in charge, to reconvene, to realize what democracy might look like, to recognize our potential, to relate to the removed, to rehouse the refugees, to rediscover the importance of listening to the renegades, to recognize the fire, the glow, the embers emblematic of a city battered by decades of parasitic shit. Look out and you will see the place my mum saw a driver shot at point blank on the old Park Road. Look out and you will see etchings of army checkpoints, men in doorways with plastic bottles. You will see Food City and Sports Direct and their labor or their Zionism, or you will see City Hall and kids pissing on a statue of the Queen, or you will see the melted steel beams of the port city and that place that homeless lady died, and you will see malls and jewelry stores being robbed, and Noodle Hut and KFC and MSG and House of Wines, and men putting Colombian talc up their noses and trusting men more with their pints than their girlfriends. Look out and you'll see the STI clinic and where people go to get their, tests. Look up and you'll see an apple or a rock or a bullet flying toward your brain, or you will see the unseen creep and smother of nothingness killing you instead.
Amazing, Arun. Thank you so much. Wonderful. Appreciate it. Nora, I believe that you are next to take us through, so I hand over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Arun. That was really, really cool. And thank you, Raji, for bringing Arun in here. So yeah, we're really excited today to hear from Yvette, who represents AIESEC, Middle East and Africa, in her session entitled Leadership, Entrepreneurship, and a World Beyond COVID-19, a Young Person's Insight. But before I pass the mic to her, I really want to introduce Yvette and who will moderate this panel. So she's really a passionate youth leadership enthusiast with an academic background in nutrition and food science, who has strategically transferred her skill set to the world of youth and volunteerism since she joined AIESEC in 2016. She has 4 years of active participation in youth development and empowerment, tackling the sustainable development goals towards economic empowerment. AIESEC, if you don't know, is the largest youth-led organization in the world, present in over 120 countries and territories. Currently, Yvette is the regional manager for business development for Middle East and Africa, managing partnership and collaborating with organizations that work with AIESEC. Prior to this, she served as a country director for AIESEC in Tanzania, where she's spearheaded several innovative and leadership initiatives targeted at youth capacity building, empowerment, and skills acquisition. Wow, Yvette, you're amazing. You're Wonder Woman. So it's really my sincere pleasure to pass the mic to you and start this panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Nora. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Raji. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, everyone. Like Nora said, my name is Yvette, and I'm part of an organization called AIESEC, which is the largest youth-led organization in the world. And I'm really excited to be here. So when I got contacted by Jim and Matt to, be a part of this next gen space, I thought it was a really, really great thing that Ubiquity University is doing. And especially for this week, to allow young people to, come on board to share what they're doing in their various countries and various roles and in different aspects. So like the topic says, we're going to talk about youth leadership and entrepreneurship during this challenging time in COVID, and for us as young people, because all of the panelists or all of the speakers that are going to be here are young people below the age of 30. And I know that it will really bring great insights to the conversation below. So I'm going to share my screen as I introduce the panelists. So they're going to tell us about themselves and the work that they do. And we will start the conversation. So yeah. So Debbie, please go ahead. Please introduce yourself and then tell us about what you do.
Hi, Yvette. Thank you very much. Should I turn on my video? Or...
Yes, please.
All right. Okay, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm really glad to be here with you all. Thank you, Yvette, for inviting me, and thank you, Arun, for the spoken word. It was really cool. I really enjoyed it. I hope there's somewhere else I can find it to listen to it again. Yes. I am Deborah, as Yvette said. I am speaking from Accra, Ghana. I am a member of the Global Shapers community here in Accra. The Global Shapers community is a group of people in cities across the world that carry out initiatives to change their communities for the better. It is an initiative of the World Economic Forum. I currently lead the employment and education team to carry out initiatives for young people, especially in underprivileged areas, right? I am also a co-founder of Oniocha Limited, which is a digital platform that seeks to connect writers, readers, publishers, and book lovers together to make it easier to get access to the books they really want in this part of the world, especially in Ghana and Africa. So we seek to bridge that gap. I also work in student exchange as an alumni of a US Department exchange program, where we send students from countries with large Muslim populations over to the US, and also host students from the US as in public diplomacy to help with cultural exchange and to help develop leadership capacities in high school students. I love to read, I love to write, and I have a blog which I share my work. I'm really glad to be here, excited to speak to all of you, to learn from you and share my perspectives on entrepreneurship in this part of the world. Thank you. Right, so here are some photos of me and in the work I do. So the first photo is when I first started out my business and I had to pitch it to investors to get funding. That is the first photo you can see on the far left-hand side. Right in the middle, here's a group of women in the Global Shapers community in Accra on International Women's Day 2020. One of the things we are really passionate and committed to is gender equality are committed to diversity, improving the visibility of women in the workplace, and improving the visibility of women in the workplace and other minorities, right? So we have pictures of me with my student exchange group leading a conversation about mental moments, and that is mental health in Ghana, and also business and entrepreneurship in Ghana. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. We have Amani now. Amani Shayo.
Hello, everyone. Nice meeting you all. Thank you, Yvette, for the introduction, and thank you for all the previous speakers for setting up the forum. My name is Amani Shayo from Tanzania. I'm happy to be in this platform. Just to share a little bit about myself, if Yvette could just scroll to the next screen, so I could just talk as they see. So as I said, I'm from Tanzania, currently working with a human capital agency called Empower, focusing entirely on talent acquisition. We also provide learning and development service for different organizations. And we also provide advisory services for different companies and organizations operating in Tanzania. But also we have a specific focus in youth, whereby we provide them with opportunities to either be employed or opportunities to start their own initiatives. And I am handling that. Previously, I was also a member of AIESEC, a youth-led organization as Yvette, and I was also the country president for AIESEC in Tanzania, which I handed over to Yvette after I finished my term. And part of other activities that I'm currently doing, I'm an active curator of TEDx here in Tanzania. We have a TEDx Oyster Bay where we engage young people to share their inside ideas and different activities that they do by giving them a platform. And also I actively involve myself in other youth organizations. I'm also a member of Global Shapers Community chapter of Dar es Salaam. And I also have a group of friends where we do monthly visits to a group of people that need our help. At personal time, I also enjoy reading and writing, and also have some few articles that I write to just spark ideas and initiatives across young people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amani. And now we have Isaac Damian. Isaac, your microphone is off.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. Hi, everyone. I want to say thank you to Yvette for bringing me on board, and to the organizers and the speakers. So to meet every one of you. My name is Isaac Damian. I am a Queen's Young Leader. So the Queen's Young Leader is a network of young people selected from within the Commonwealth countries for an award in recognition of the work that they do in advancing growth in the Commonwealth countries. And the award was given by the Queen of England. And I'm also a goalkeeper. I was selected as a goalkeeper at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in 2019. So goalkeepers are also like ambassadors who are heralding and pushing, advancing the SDGs globally. Yeah, so my name is Damian Isaac, and I'm also the founder of Teens Can Code. So what we do at Teens Can Code is to empower young people with technology. So what we say we do is to access to technology education for people, especially those living in rural Africa. We have people who are not able to fund their tech education. They come to us, we train them. And one of the key things that we also do is to help them find jobs and connect them to internship programs around the world. So those who couldn't fund their education, they come to Teens Can Code, they get trained, and then they start earning and then working for organizations globally. That's what we do at Teens Can Code. And here is a picture. The first one is a picture of one of our major programs, which is the Go Girls. So we have a special program for girls where we train young girls on computer programming and also find them jobs. And then the second one, where we have the Teens Code Conference, is one of our major programs is the Teens Code Conference. So it's a large gathering of young people where we talk about technology, and then we showcase the work of young people some of those that we have trained. So we have some of our young people on stage there talking about the solutions that they are creating to solve problems in Nigeria. And of course, the other one is me receiving an award from the Queen of England. That's really amazing. And then the other one is a picture of our conference. I think this was one we had in 2017, yes. So I'm so great to be part of this panelist. Thank you so very much.
And we have Ayanda. Please go ahead.
Cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Ayanda Siboto from Cape Town, South Africa. I am a communicator, I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm a connector. But essentially, I've been working in the media and marketing industry for the past 10 years, focusing more specifically on entrepreneurship in the last 5. So I guess to go through some of the pictures, on the top, the biggest picture there is a program that we spearheaded over the past 2 years, where we've been focusing on getting female-led startups through a digital empowerment program. So it's an online accelerator that women from across the country in Southern Africa have been able to get sponsorship from the UK government to be able to participate in. And that's women at ideation stage and early stage businesses who otherwise would not have had access to business development services. So we give them training through 12-week programs online, and then we pair them up with mentorship and coaches. And through my other capacity, I guess, lower down, I've been the marketing manager at an organization here in South Africa called the Cape Innovation and Technology Initiative. And there we kind of segmented a couple of the startup sectors where we would drive more focus, where there's more attention needed in what the South African startup ecosystem needed. We opened up opportunities for young people interested in getting into fintech, so financial technology solutions, creating accelerator programs and plugging into other global accelerator programs so that our young people can get exposure and can get to learn and can really get to showcase what they're working on. We have also opened up initiatives in education technology, EdTech. We ran one of the first Pan-African, actually, EdTech accelerators called Ingenie in Africa 2 years ago, and it's been running, I think, 2-3 years ago now. And yeah, in biotech and in a number of other specific big data-related industries, so that we can start to collate the data and really be able to distinguish what niches and what does Africa really need to, in what directions does Africa need to be developing. And I guess on this platform, I'm representing my personal capacity. The last 3 pictures sum up an organization that I had initially launched 4 years ago. That's the top right picture. Where I had initially secured my first round of investments or funding, that is, for the current business that I'm running, which is a beauty tech business. So an industry I didn't think obviously Africa was ready for then, but you know, securing funding really kind of gave me the direction to push and open up the conversation. And this is the business that I've recently relaunched now in the time of COVID, strangely enough, in the last month, helping beauty entrepreneurs and helping entrepreneurs, I think, with the skill in beauty, really figure out how they can build sustainable industries for themselves throughout Africa. It's a natural skill set. Every second person knows someone who's making money from being able to either do someone's hair or makeup or. And COVID has rendered most of those people kind of dormant. They're sitting at home without a way to actually use that skill to make an income. So how can they rebuild their livelihoods? And then how can we contribute to rebuilding this very, very profitable industry for African people into a much more sustainable and one where we can really use the insights from all of these women across the continents to really be able to drive it forward. So yeah, really glad to add to the conversation and glad to be here. Thank you.
Petrider, are you there?
Can you hear us?
Yes. Hello, everyone. So my name is Petrider Paul, as the screen is probably sharing the bio details, and I'm part of the African Union Youth Envoys Office Advisory Council under the African Union Youth Advisory Council. So ideally, I wanted to share probably a slide as I share what we've been doing at the African Union level currently on youth leadership and COVID-19 and different interventions we've engaged in. So ideally, I'll need the screen to stop sharing this particular screen so that I can be able to share my screen. Okay, thank you.
Could you turn on your video? Excuse me, we can't see you right now. Would it be possible for you?
I can turn on my video at the moment
Okay, sorry.
I'm actually in a place where I can't. All right. So ideally, what we've done at the African Union Youth Envoy's office in tackling COVID-19 and with the whole youth leadership from different 5 regions of Africa is conducting different visual sessions. So recently we've done about 40 virtual youth consultations with young people representatives of the National Youth Councils, women-led networks, young people in a parliamentary position, but also different young people who are gathered up in groups that are hard to reach. So the consultations was in partnership with the African CDC. The African CDC is the Center for Disease Control. And authorized by the chair. The overall idea have been taking place since around March, April, while the peak of COVID-19 in Africa started hitting really, really hard, was to bring about the different youth groups so as we can start launching the Africa Youth Front on COVID-19. And this initiative ideally has been launched a couple of weeks back by the AU Commissioner, whereby the African Youth Front on COVID-19 is focusing on different interventions to empower young people, from providing seed grant and also sharing their work, spotlighting young people from different African countries who are doing immense work. And just to share a few examples of different young people who are taking leadership roles currently and doing massive work on tackling COVID-19 is first of all the Vijana think tank, who actually led a crowd funding to build a permanent water station in congested market of Dar es Salaam, which is the main business city area that actually had high cases of COVID-19. And despite the fundraiser right now being actually closed, it was the outcome of the fundraiser that they managed to actually build 5 permanent water stations. And we are aware that majority of the communities in Africa do not have access to buy sanitizers actually. So more on relying on water and hand washing to prevent the spread of COVID-19, but also sharing some key highlights from Mayamiko Nkoloma, who's a young person in Malawi who has been awarded a Cambridge Africa Alborada Research Fund. And this was basically due to his innovative work that he's been doing to actually create face shields and also face masks. And ideally all the face mask and face shields that he's going to be producing through the Cambridge Africa Alborada Research Fund will be able to impact about 20,000 Malawians in the community who are in need of PPEs, face shields and face masks at free of charge. So we're looking at different young people in Africa who are taking lead and doing different initiatives to tackle COVID-19. However, our role basically on addressing COVID-19 at the African Union level is to work with different youth groups to help provide support, to convene different initiatives that can provide a platform for meaningful engagement, but also act as catalyzers whereby they can advocate to implement different progressive policies and that can have a better impact within their communities. And also that we have different aspects such as amplifier, bridger build, and Pan-African mobilizer. We actually do have a really strong belief that majority of the young people can be the bridge from Africa and different countries to connect and engage, to support each other. As we've seen, a lot of partnerships have brought different success when it comes to tackling COVID-19 and also standing together in solidarity during these times of COVID-19, as young people are still facing issues of unemployment, issues of being radicalized, and issues of gender-based violence, which are mainly the major hits of youth currently in Africa when it comes to COVID-19 and outside of Africa, and some of them are really actually silenced. So just after sharing all that, I think that's the end of my presentation from my side, and over to the moderator.
Thank you, AIESEC, Amani, Debbie, Petrider, for sharing your stories and what you do. And we're just going to delve straight into the conversation because especially for all of you and for me as well as a young person or as a young leader, we like to, classify ourselves as leaders. So I'd like to ask, because everybody's coming from different regions. I know AIESEC and Deborah are coming from West Africa, which is Ghana and Nigeria. Ayanda is from South Africa. Amani and Petrider from East Africa, sorry. But in your understanding, what do people in your different regions think about leadership? When we say leadership, how does it reflect and how do they see it? How do they manifest, especially for you in your different fields of work? So we will start with Shayo first, and then we move to Petrider.
Okay, thank you, Yvette, for that question. It's a very tricky question to answer because you're talking about a population which is almost half of what we have currently. But I will reflect on my own experience because I've been in those situations more than once. And what I will say is, I think I grew up in a perspective where leadership has been perceived as a position. And this has been either because of the stories, the narratives that has been shaped to us, the young people, where every time when we hear the word leader, then the next thing that comes to it is either a political figure or it's either someone with a certain position. So I think that has been always the narrative. And currently the young people, I would say we are somehow victims of that because we somehow believe that to be a leader you need to have a certain title or a certain position. But I think there have been a lot of development right now, and for me is thinking of what leadership is and actually showing leadership. I think they're two different things. So we might have still have an idea that leadership equals to a certain position or leadership is means entitlement for a certain role. But I think currently there's been a very heavy effort in terms of empowering young people to start acting as leaders. So to take initiatives, and this is something that I see across different communities that I'm a part of, but also seeing other people that are involved in different in other organizations. So leadership has now transformed from either a certain political figure or having position to taking active roles and coming up with solutions to find ways of which young people can be involved, to find different solutions and solve issues that can affect us directly, related to economic issues, social issues, or anything that we as young people think it really matters and it is important to us. So I think that is currently the narratives here, and I think it's a good thing. Giving these platforms, this is where now we start pushing that agenda and encouraging these young people who now want to do more, these young people who want to challenge that narratives of leadership means you need to have a certain position, to taking active roles in different either organizations, different platforms, or different situations that they require them to showcase their leadership qualities. I believe I responded.
Okay, thank you, Amani. Petrider, what do you think in your sphere of work with the African Union? I know that the African Union is doing quite a lot of work when it comes to changing people on the ground, but what is your take on that? Petrider?
Pardon me, Yvette, could you repeat the question? If I got you right, you mentioned on leadership and youth, how do they relate? Could you repeat the question?
And for you working with the African Union, what do you think about this? Because you're on the ground and you work directly with young people involved in various initiatives that is centered around empowering them to become better leaders in their communities. So what is your take on how leadership is reflected in East Africa with the African Union?
I mean, from my perspective and what we've been really working on the ground, what leadership really means is actually an aspect where any person, whether it's a young person or an older generation, actually come together and co-lead in different aspects. When we have co-intergenerational dialogues, it's a momentum where the young people can actually have a platform to learn from the older generation, but also the older generation can learn from the younger generation, because currently we've been seeing a lot of complaints where young people are complaining on the current leadership roles by the older generation. However, we do not really know what's inside that whole role in particular, maybe with their limitations and even the bureaucracies that could be in place. How best can we try to change them in more amicable ways without seemingly to be aggressive? And also the fact that anyone really can be a leader and lead in their community. It doesn't need for a person to have a bigger platform, or it doesn't need a person to have a higher rank. Leadership starts within a family, within neighborhoods, within friends. Actually, it's that momentum where one wants to influence change and impact change.
Yvette, are you there? Have we lost you? It may be the case that we have lost Yvette. But I would continue. I would encourage the panel to continue. Who would like to speak afterwards? Deborah.
Right. Yes. Hi. Well, I think that what leadership is about has been changing. At first, many people used to see leaders to be, people who are in big positions, who are kind of over you, have oversight over you. You look up to them to do everything. But leadership is about being able to inspire people, to unify them around a certain goal, to come together to achieve a particular purpose. And when you look at it this way, you realize that we are all leaders because we are all inspiring ourselves to achieve things in our own lives. We inspire ourselves first of all. We inspire ourselves to get up in the morning, to go to school, to go to work, to start a business. We inspire our families, we inspire our communities to come together to do things. And so now leadership is no longer about being in a position, or when you have a leader, it's not about the leader having to do everything over you, but you have to realize that you also have agency. And even in our communities, even in the political system, being a leader is also getting up to vote, exercising your right to vote, to decide what leader you want, what kind of person you want in a particular position over you instead of being very apathetic. So I think leadership is basically just understanding that you have responsibility for yourself, you have responsibility for those in your family, those in your immediate environment, and those in the world at large. Once you're able to understand this sort of responsibility, then you are in a better position to carry out your leadership very well. So that's what I have to say about it.
Thank you, Debbie. I had a bit of a challenge with my internet. So Isaac, you go next, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So for a country like Nigeria, where a lot of young people, a lot of people view leadership as our major problem in Nigeria. So they see leadership as a problem that needs to be solved. And people see leaders are the cause of the problems that we face today. But I also tell them that, yes, leadership might be a problem in Nigeria, but leadership is also the solution. If we're going to make changes, if we're going to get better, it's still going to be about our leadership. So as a social innovator, I've been opportune to travel various regions in Nigeria. And the truth is, I've seen lots of problems. There's the education problem, there's the health sector problem that we need to fix, name them, lots of them. But you know, like John Maxwell said, everything rises and falls on leadership. For example, when a football team is not doing well and the fans call out for the coach to be changed, in the same way, if a nation is not making any meaningful progress, the right of the citizen is to use their ballot paper, their ballot box to produce a new leader that they feel understand the things that they need. So I think that leadership is more about selflessness. So and what Nigeria, from my view, what we need is a selfless leader. And I think also the same for Africa at large. One who is willing to serve the people and understand where the shoe pinches. And this is just one of the things that we do at Teens Can Code, helping young people identify problems and also supporting them to solve social problems. This is because I envision a nation where young people are empowered with skills to realize their potential and confidently create their future. And I believe that if we have selfless leaders, they will be able to create an environment for young people to try, because what we also need in Nigeria is leaders that are innovative, especially in innovating our economy, because for most of the African countries, I know we are very reliant on, we rely so much on natural resources like Nigeria, we rely so much on petroleum. But how about a situation where Nigeria begins to innovate? Rather, instead of just exporting petroleum, we can begin to make petroleum jellies. In other words, producing, making products that we can export to the outside world. So I think selfless leadership and innovation, it's what we need. And also, of course, bringing young people on board to commit into nation building. A lot of young people want to be part of the change. A lot of young people want to be part of what is going on. But the truth is, in Nigeria, for instance, they are not being given the opportunity. So I think young people need to come on board and then take the center stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Isaac. And Ayanda, what is your take on it being from Southern Africa?
Being from South Africa, I think my country's history has taught us that really being a good or an effective leader is being a leader who can take accountability. Accountability is very important. You need to be the person that people can rely on. Number one, to say, this is where we have made the mistakes. You need to be the kind of person that people can rely on to say, these are the kind of people that we need to be bringing on board. And these are the kind of balances that we need to strike. So ordinarily, the kind of leader that works in my country is a charismatic leader. It's not really so much about being stern or a disciplinarian, but it's someone who can understand people. South Africa, especially Southern Africa, has so many different cultures, so many different tribes. South Africa alone as a country has 11 different languages, and under those languages, many other different cultures. So you cannot have a sense of uniformity in any opinion or in any leadership style, but it's really about being able to listen to people and then being accountable to those people to represent their best interests, and then collectively collectively as a unit to be able to roll those out. And I think, and especially now in the time of COVID, it has become so much more important for young people to really understand that the type of dynamism that they need to have as leaders, even in innovation, even in moving forward things like governance and things like running businesses and making kind of decisions that affect ultimately the running of the economy at the moment. Because according to our COVID rules, people who are over the age of 60, for example, have to, or not have to, but are advised strongly to stay at home because they're high risk for COVID as our numbers rise steadily, which would mean about over 60% of our parliament, 60% of the people who lead our country are now having to work from home in an environment they've never had to work in. They spent the past 40 or 30 years of their lives working from an office with an office computer with an assistant who can help them with everything. And now they're having to learn, how do they integrate technology? How do they moderate? How do they delegate, right? And they're needing an injection of youth in all of those government departments. They're needing an injection of youth in all of the departments that are really, really relevant in terms of how do we take an economy that is still building like ours is and really lift it to the level that we needed to be able to get through COVID. When it comes to our education system, how do we get the education to children in the rural areas? How are we getting education to, when it comes to health services, innovating in terms of how we can get proper testing and innovating in terms of how we can track and, finding out where are the points where we can collect data that can collectively inform us so that we can better govern and we can better deliver to people. But we need people in those positions who are accountable. We need people in those positions who can be honest, who can understand people, who can reach people. And so, yeah, leadership has definitely changed. It's constantly, I think, changing with the differing needs of the continent, but also of now the pandemic. But it's helping us get closer to the people and it's helping us listen to the people. And you need a leader that's not just about the vision they have, but it's about the vision that best benefits the people they lead.
Thank you, Ayanda. I think that's such great insights from everybody. And for me, also coming from West Africa and having lived in the East and literally worked all over Middle East and Africa, I do understand the importance of leadership, especially for the young person. But just to ask again, because I know that a lot of you are entrepreneurs in your own right, would you say that a lack of leadership that addresses the needs of the people is what led you to start your business or to start your startup? And I'll start with Debbie to answer this question.
Hi, Yvette. Thank you for this question. Well, there are problems with leadership in this part of Africa, in West Africa, in terms of creation of jobs, in terms of employment, in terms of equipping young people with the skills that would let them be well to fit into these jobs. But for me personally, that's not the very reason why I decided to start a business. I had identified a gap in my society in the field of education, in getting books to people that really needed them, in both even in the privileged and underprivileged areas. And I saw that I had the skill, I had the resources, I had the community, I could bring people together to try and bridge this gap. That is why I went for it. I would say that problems of leadership, it's not the lack of leadership that led me to start my business, but due to certain deficiencies in leadership here in Ghana, and especially in Ghana, because this is where I am, it has made this journey a bit more difficult than I would have hoped it would be. It has made things like getting access to funding, getting access to data, getting, setting up and scaling this business more difficult than it has been. But I also like to admit that it gets better, it's getting better. I like to say that the leaders are also putting in more effort to recognize that, entrepreneurship is a thing that young people need to go into, putting in policies and initiatives to make it easier for them, like tax holidays and all of that. So even though there are problems, I would say that it's getting better. And as more young people are going into, let's say, political leadership, they are able to relate to the struggles of the youth and are able to come up with solutions that help the youth in their business. So I think this is where it's going in Ghana. And I think that if we keep taking up responsibility and we keep seeing ourselves as agents of our own development, we are more able to bring up solutions, work together, come together to keep improving the situation as it is. Thank you.
Thank you. I like the fact that you mentioned that if we become agents of our own development, we definitely can do more. What about you, Isaac? Would you say that it was a lack of leadership that led you to, start your startup, or just like Debbie, it was a gap that you identified in your community to, bridge that and start Teens Can Code?
Okay, yeah, so you know how they tell us, be your own boss, have your own time, and then you decide how much you want to make. So apparently they lied to us because I haven't really had my own time since we started Teens Can Code. I haven't even been my boss. So, but for me, Teens Can Code was really more of a ministry. So I have always worked with teenagers before we started Teens Can Code. But I just thought that rather than just giving them information, knowledge, inspiring and motivating them, I could impact them with something even more practical and something that can be relevant with their future. And then also based on my own personal experience growing up, then struggling with life, I have seen technology transform my life quickly. And also because I was working with teenagers, a lot of them kept asking to learn from me, to learn things that I know. I've always been a graphics designer using computer, and then they wanted to learn this thing. So on my birthday around 2016, so I decided I was going to train 10 of them. So I gathered the 10 of them, and really, I wasn't really planning to start out an organization. I thought it was just something I would do one of that period. And then, the result was so palpable, it was so loud that we had to continue the program. And of course, one other thing I will mention is the fact that there are no jobs in Nigeria. So young people are beginning to find their own solutions. They are beginning to create their own jobs, and they're thereby creating jobs for other people. You come out of school, there is no job. So the next thing you want to do is, start up your own project. And that's what we're doing with young people. We empower them with the skills, and then they're thinking, okay, what else can I do with the knowledge that I have received? And then you see them starting their own project. So that's really what led me to do this. My own experience growing up, how technology transformed my life very quickly as a young person, that I started seeing myself doing far better than my peers. And that was just because of my relationship with technology, the fact that I was able to embrace technology. So I saw this difference, I saw this transformation, and I thought that if I train other people, just maybe technology, it can also help them and transform their lives also. And that is what is currently happening. We see young people who from low income communities, they get into our training, and today they are earning, and then they're able to support their parents and support their own education. Yeah, thank you so very much.
Thank you, Damian. And Ayanda, what is your take on that?
Take that in.
Cool. Oh, sorry. I guess, well, in my opinion, I'd worked in entrepreneur development for quite some time, actually. When I decided to finally start my own, in a direction that was, let's just say not so common, right? When I picked beauty tech, a lot of people just thought I wanted to open up a beauty salon. A lot of people just thought I wanted to carry on and offer beauty services to the next person. But for me, it was looking at the African society from a needs basis. What is something that we have, that we've always had, that sustains a lot of family from a simple skills basis? And beauty was one of those industries that stood out for me. Beauty is the fourth biggest industry in the world, because women and men are constantly either paying for their hair to get done, their nails to get done, personal hygiene and general wellness. It all falls under beauty. And with a large amount of young people in my country being unemployed, and a large amount, I think about 50% of our youth actually, probably even more now due to COVID, getting unemployed, I think for me it was, how can we use the basic skills that people already have to plug them into digital solutions that can enable them to build sustainability through those skills? So I'm not looking to teach them anything brand new. I'm looking at something that they're already good in, that we can introduce them to a business model or a business strategy that can help them be able to build sustainability for themselves. And the beauty sector was one of those things. Every Black woman knows another Black woman who has been paid to do someone's hair. It is a skill that we have honed over generations, decades, There are women who have done this for over 20 years. And right now with COVID, if she were told to stay home, her entire family would not be able to kind of sustain themselves, because her livelihood, her primary livelihood, was being able to put her hands in someone's head. And so how can we help those women, the hundreds of thousands, and possibly if you're looking at across Africa, the millions of women with that skill, that knowledge about the products that work for African women, that knowledge about the different, not really different products, but also kind of the different brands, right? Because they're a hub of data that they've never recorded anywhere, data that they've never given anyone. It's purely virtue and value that they've exchanged across women, across the centuries, information that big brands and big companies are looking for to inform them of how to better service the African markets. How can we get these women to understand how to build a sustainable business model that can feed in the information that the industry needs, so that they can add their voice in structuring their money, because they put money towards beauty every single year we buy. We are the majority funder of the beauty industry across this continent, and it would, I think, be a better solution for the women that actually are best at making sure that these products are well used, to really also be able to have an opportunity to be able to explore what other business models could they use, how else could they become involved in the industry, not just as people who touch people's hair, but people who share expertise, but people who can be a part of product development moving forward, and just structuring this industry so that they have a more consolidated voice. Because right now we can't find them. We know that there's hundreds and thousands, and I mean millions of these women across Africa, but they're not registered on a database. They're not registered anywhere. They're not consolidated anywhere. So this is an effort to be able to share good practice with them, to be able to share good business to build in sustainability, as well as to add their voice in the greater beauty industry in shaping what Africa needs and where Africa needs to be going.
Thank you, Ayanda. But to you, Shayo, I know that you are more in the formal sector as compared to Debbie, Damian, and Ayanda, who are in the informal or the entrepreneurial sector. But what is the connection between the informal sector in terms of the people that work on the ground and you in a corporate body? How are you, or what are you doing to bridge the gap? What is Empower doing? What are you doing on a personal level to bridge the gap between the formal and informal sector? And then, combining everything that has to do with leadership as well.
All right, thank you for that. So what I will say is, I truly believe when we talk about employment, currently there's a lot of push that the young people should start looking at the initiatives of creating their own thing, which I'm also a very big fan of that. But also we need to also look at another aspect of, example, private employment right now, which for the case of my own country, this is a segment that take most of the people currently. If you're looking at most of the graduates, when they finish school, most of them are looking at permanent employment in already structured enterprises or different organizations. So still, this is a very untapped market in a way that most of the students don't have the skills, which again, leadership comes back to that, because skills is not only about the technical competence of whether you can do the job or not, but it's also about how do you carry yourself, and also how do you prepare yourself so as you can start or you can launch your career. And looking at currently in my own organization, what are we doing exactly? You can see where I'm also focusing heavily on the advisory side of the business, which this is, we provide support to different organizations, let it be startups, let it be small and medium enterprises or large multinationals, for them to run the organization in a more sustainable way, but also to have the right data they need, to have the right people they need, so as they can achieve organizational excellency. And for us, because yes, we are formal sector, but again, those people who we can say they are informal, it may be because of the institutional void that currently partake, including things like the legal frameworks that are not in place for them to be formal, or including things like the access to capital, access to market. So it's sooner or later, these guys who we consider as informal, if we have everything set, then we'll start becoming formal. I'll give an example. Currently in my own country, if you look at the industry where, creative industry, you look at photographers, looking at people that, making art, these are the people right now during the COVID are the people that are affected a lot, but also is one of the industry that is also has a lot of potential, because it's the time where you need to communicate. People need to maintain their sanity. You know, the creative industry is booming right now. The photographers that used to just take cameras and walk around in a few years back, currently they're setting up businesses, and they're also forming partnership with also corporate partners. So I would say the formality or informality that currently exists is just because of the frameworks that we don't have. But if we have those frameworks, then sooner or later, a lot of people will be able to graduate universities, and the first option will be for them to run their own businesses. Because I think right now, it needs courage, especially in countries where most of the things are not in place. It needs courage to take that step and say, yeah, I'm going to start my own business. So for me, how I find myself here is because I was somehow prepared. Looking at my history, I joined AIESEC and I was exposed to different environment where I got to explore one or two areas where I need to know I'm passionate about. So later, after I finished university and I finished AIESEC, it was quite easier for me to join the corporate sector and work in areas where my my skill set allowed me to do that, but also my heart in terms of passion. So I think the connection is there because of the institution of void, but also we should look at the formal sector, because it's also one of the potential, including potential by taking a lot of people that are finishing university and supporting them to come up or to grow their businesses if they need to focus on that in that journey of entrepreneurship.
Thank you, Shayo. I'm now moving on to my next question, and that has a lot to do with the challenges that we face as young entrepreneurs or as young leaders in the continent. I mean, Africa has a growing population, and we are at the forefront of a digital economy. Statistics say that by 2050, more than half of the world's population will be in Africa, and the continent is home to about 6 out of 10 of the fastest growing economies in the world. So I do definitely agree that entrepreneurship is a tool to help people stay adaptable, and social innovators or entrepreneurs are better able to notice, like, the trends that are coming across the continent. But COVID-19 has affected a lot of what we do, especially for you as entrepreneurs. I'd like you to share, starting with Damian, how this pandemic has affected your startup and what are the challenges that you're facing currently because of the situation.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that question. Frankly speaking, we didn't have a contingency plan for COVID type of situation. I mean, it wasn't something that we were expecting. So entering the year 2020, we came in with so much enthusiasm that this is what we want to do with our plans and all that. But then COVID came. It caught us unprepared, I must say. It caught us unprepared. We didn't have a contingency plan. So we started planning deep into the situation. Schools were already closed. Our centers were also closed because mostly we work with young people and students. So our centers were closed. Partners were already withdrawing their funds. So for us, it looks like a judgment day. It's like, you guys just pack up. You aren't that great anymore, and you're not so needed this period. And of course, our type of work is not an emergency. I remember when we were just about 2 weeks into the lockdown, I was telling someone, I'm like, the work that we do is not an emergency. So right now, nobody's listening to us. Nobody would die if they don't code. So right now, everybody is talking about food, talking about marks and all that health materials. Yes, but one of the things that we have done is to open up learning online, especially to our communities. It's something that we didn't use consistently before. We usually just do it once in a while. But since the lockdown, we had to find other ways to teach young people, and online was just the easiest one for us. So we took most of our programs online. We were using Zoom, Google Meet to carry out our program. And then also, just recently, we launched an online platform for students. It's a Quora type of forum. It's a Quora type forum where students can share files, ask questions, and then learn from other students from their homes. So this is why we're doing that is because schools are closed, but we're saying that learning can still be open wherever you are. You can still learn even if the schools are closed. Yeah. So we didn't envisage what is happening, but we're just trying to keep our heads up and see how we can take advantage of technology. Of course, we are a tech organization and it's very impactful. And recently, we're also running a pilot program to see some other programs aside the coding. There are other programs that we do. So we're running a pilot program through this month of June to see how it will work online. Because of course, there are so much challenges when it comes to online in Nigeria. There's the issue of internet especially, and then there's also the issue of data. Those who even have data probably have internet issues. And then those who have just laptop don't even have the money to pay for the data. So there are lots of things that also might be challenging for us right now. But yes, we're just testing all the tools that we can to see what works best. But of course, we are already taking advantage of online platforms to carry out our programs. Yeah, thank you.
Debbie?
Right. So we were digital from the beginning. We were already connecting readers, writers, and publishers on a digital platform. However, COVID-19, because it was unexpected, still disrupted some of our operations. One of the ways was that we were expecting some grant money from some foreign donors, and for some economic financial reasons, we weren't able to get that money that we could use to advance some of our business operations. And we also had a problem with certain suppliers due to the closure of the borders in response to COVID-19. What this did for us really was made us quicken the plan we have for making, let's say, publishing to be more local, making publishing to be encouraging more writers here in Ghana to send their work out there so that we do not really have to rely on books that are coming from outside of Ghana, outside of the continent, from other places. So this has just quickened or brought to us the fact that we have to be faster about inspiring more indigenous writing, indigenous publishing, and all of that. It's also opened us to, making even though our operations were already digital, making all parts of it more automated. Yes, to be able to respond well to COVID-19. I would say that it's a good thing that many more businesses are looking to go digital now. And I think that helps with adaptability. It helps us to be more resilient. It helps us to be more robust. And it helps to be able to reach all people everywhere, no matter where they are and what they can do. And that is very good for the African continent because there are many people that are currently dislocated from certain services. And digitalization is the answer to that.
Thank you, Debs. Ayanda?
Cool. So COVID-19, COVID-19 put a lot of people in our sector out of work. And I think this was the biggest push that I needed to roll out things a lot more faster. So it went from being a concept idea that was still looking for the new kind of next batch of funding to really roll out a big project to let's just roll out the most practical thing that the businesses will need after this. Because everybody is at home because of this. So what are the first couple of things people are going to need to know or need to be able to do in their businesses when they're allowed to open? So what are the health practices and how can we get those to people? And what forms of technology are people out there? So now that people have been at home, so to speak, it's been our time to really connect and speak to them, understand what it is that they need, understand where it is that they're located, but get them on the same page, get them on the same platform and get connected. And while we've been getting connected with people, it's really being able to pushed us and pushed me to push forward once again some of the partnerships that we need, because a lot of our informal entrepreneurs aren't registered anywhere. There are people who operate for themselves just for extra money to live or money to feed their families, but because they're unregistered anywhere, they were unable to get government subsidies. So they were unable to get support that other businesses were able to get to tide them over the next 3 months. So this time is a very critical time in terms of how do you restart as a business and start to build up not just sustainability, but a windfall. Kind of like Damian said, a lot of people were caught off guard and didn't have backup. So how do you build up a business model that gives you more than just one income stream? How do you start to understand how to use your skill and how to use your information and how to use your knowledge? And what are the different types of accelerator programs that we can bring to these women who want to learn, these women who now realize that they need to diversify? How can we bring this information across to a wide range of people via, technology, accelerator online programs that people can attend over Facebook. People can be able to get this information through WhatsApp. So what are the challenges? What are the tools? So it's been a big learning factor. And it's, you know, it's the saying where you never waste a good pandemic, or you never waste kind of a good crisis, right? Because it's really pushed us to create in a short space of time something we would have otherwise taken a year to put together. We've now put it together in 2 months and are ready to roll out and are ready to assist because we have the time. So yeah, it's an interesting time. It's a difficult time, but at the same time, I think we've been able to pull together in a way that pushes us to move forward much faster, but also much more strategically.
Thank you, Ayanda. I think the main takeaway that I've had from the last three speakers is the fact that we have to be innovative even in a pandemic. And it's really amazing to hear what you guys are doing with your own startups, regardless of the pandemic. But coming to you, Shayo, your background, like I said before, you're in the formal sector, and it's quite different from the entrepreneurial sector, because I would think that they are the ones that have been the hardest hit by this pandemic. I'm not saying that corporate organizations are not hit as well. I mean, they have been hit, but then to some sort of level, I think they're very much way better off than the startups. So how has this pandemic affected your work at Empower, and how has it just affected Empower overall?
Okay, I'd like to correct you there, Yvette. I think we're also part of the, the side that has been faced a lot of effects as part of COVID. So first of all, looking at the nature of our business, so we are centered around people. So everything that we do in one way or the other required people to come together. Let it be if we want to train, we have to, group people in a certain space and then train them. If we want to do consulting, it's also involved around people, unless it's management consulting where we look at other things, let's say like strategy and stuff. But also the nature of customers that we have also, they were quite very sensitive in a way that most of the customers tried to measure at the very early stage of this pandemic. So we have been affected heavily in a way that we had to find ways where we can deliver our services virtually. And I think this has, in looking at the positive side of this, it has pushed us as an organization to start looking for ways where we can still reach to our customers and still provide the same service and still provide the same value that they will get if the service was to be given in a physical space. So I would say one or two lessons personally I took from this is as much as yes, we were affected looking at the revenues, looking at the projects that probably could have happened if there was no COVID, but also right now we're in a space where even if COVID is over, our president, they said so, but I don't want to comment on that. So even if this thing is over, we are still able to keep some of the good practice, including agile working right now. It's much more easier right now to coordinate the teams. We were not there yet, but COVID somehow pushed that in just a span of 2 months. We are able now to coordinate ourselves. We don't need to be physically at one space to meet or discuss things as a team. But also some of our customers, we have been able to introduce other new service and also to induct some of our customers in how we can give them same values, like interviews, for example. As a talent acquisition company, we are used to, you have to meet with a candidate, you have to go all these processes for them to secure a job. But currently, we have been able to push some of our clients to be able to do a full interview process, including interviews and onboarding online, and this for me it's a success, and I think we have been able to adapt and come out with brave actions so as we can sustain the business, but also we can still keep engaging our customers.
Thank you. That's really amazing to see how Empower is innovating, as well as how everybody else is innovating to meet the
Okay, looks like Yvette had a little internet problem. Matt, do you want to jump in at this point?
Yeah, sure. I just had a few more questions for our panelists that I was hoping we could respond to. It's been a fantastic conversation so far. Thank you so much. And I was curious, for anyone who would like to respond to this, in my life, sometimes I recognize that there are defining experiences that shape the decisions that I make moving forward. And I was curious whether there were any particular experiences that inspired any of you to work in service of a better world. Was there something that happened when you were young, or maybe more recently with this crisis, that inspired you to take a different direction or recommit to your values as entrepreneurs and change makers in the world? So yeah, whoever feels inspired to answer that question, I would love to hear.
I can take it. I guess in my sphere, it was, I grew up in a family business. I grew up, not myself working in the family business, but my grandfather created something that was really just kind of out of necessity, because he was out of work when he got injured. And then most of my family ended up working for him and building careers through working for him. And it was that moment of watching his business, after I think about 15 years of success, fall apart, that actually was the motivator for me to go into entrepreneur development. The business fell apart, not because he didn't know how to innovate, but he had reached the cap of how he understood a business could be run. Growing up, I think, you know, back in the rural days where he grew up in the villages, you dream of building a business of such a size and having such an impact. And then once you pass that, the willingness to learn and the willingness to adapt sort of kind of leaves you, but also technology progressed at such a fast pace that even when he wanted to catch up, it kind of, there was a very big learning gap between how fast technology was advancing and how fast he was able to keep up with it. So in essence, our family legacy fell apart because of that gap, where there was no one who could bridge that gap for people in the townships, or people in rural townships, as well as just people in, you know, the underprivileged areas of South Africa who had built up livelihoods. And so this was my motivator to go into entrepreneurial development, because technology is a fickle beast, but it's also one easy to understand when made relatable to people. And we speak a lot of tech jargon when we're talking about technology, when we're talking about digital transformation, and yet there's a very big inclusion gap. There's a very, very big digital skills gap in Africa, but there's also a very big inclusion gap in the language that is used and how relatable technology is made for people and digital solutions are made for people. A lot more people would be in fintech and would have financial technology solutions if they simply understood how to use them in their businesses in a way that makes it more accessible and more expandable for them. So for me, that was the motivator. It was to take the power of technology and make it as, not really as simple as possible, but make it as applicable as possible to the normal reality of an African person without a degree or a PhD. The person who just understands how to service their market and to service their needs. How do you make them best understand which technology solutions work for them and how they can understand how to integrate them into continuing to build their legacies and continuing to integrate young people in their families to understand them to build their legacies.
Wow, that's fantastic, Ayanda. Thank you so much. I think that's such an interesting question, how we can take the big leaps in technology and actually use them to make a difference in our lives right now. I notice, you know, I'm following the protests in the United States quite closely, and I think it's just so interesting to see how people are using the technologies that we use for our everyday lives to repurpose them, to answer the call for what's needed in the moment. And it's great to hear how you're inspired to use that and make a difference. What about any of our other panelists? Amani, Deborah, AIESEC? Defining moments.
Okay, I would like to go next. Well, I will say I wouldn't really want to point a particular moment and say this has been my defining moment, but rather I have this idea in my mind that every person that you meet in one way or the other can inspire you, or you can inspire them. And for me, it's just one simple statement, but I always keep it close to my heart because that has always been the base of what I do. So my work evolves around staying with people and trying to give them either skills, trying to give them tools, or trying to give them space for them to be able to unleash their true potential. And because someone back then did that for me when I was in university, when I was in students organization, and also currently now. So for me, I always believe that, especially for us, the young people in Africa, we just need that inspiration to do more. But also we have to understand our space of we are able to inspire other people also to do more. So that has always been my mantra every single day, and it is something that proved to work because, like there's a lot of people with brilliant ideas, but they just need that one push. And there are a lot of people that, they have the capacity to do it, but just because someone did not really provide them the tools, someone did not really provide them with the right facilities for them to start whatever product, whatever process that they want to accomplish in their journey.
Beautiful. Thanks so much, Amani, Shayo. And Yvette, I see that you've rejoined us here, so back to you.
Yeah, I'm really sorry about that. My internet just went off. Challenges of being stuck in Tunisia during COVID in a very good neighborhood, but not with very strong internet. But then again, I wanted to come back to the last question that I wanted to ask the panelists that are here to speak on the issues that we have around COVID-19, entrepreneurship, and youth leadership. So just to ask again, I do know that everybody here has been involved in leadership in various aspects at one point or the other. And I'd like to know what they think about, or what you think about what the future of young people like yourselves is going to be in the continent, and how we can better be prepared for life after the pandemic, because this is something that we are living with. And like Ayanda and Gil rightly said, we don't have to waste this pandemic or this crisis that we are in. So how can young people be better prepared for life after this, especially for you in the startup world, and then for Amani in the formal sector? So I'm going to start with Ayanda, and then we go.
Cool. How can we be better prepared? I guess it's more about seeking more solutions that feed into efficiency. So right now it's looking at not really what's going to drive us forward as, the world 4.0 at the moment, but it's really what's going to drive us forward as societies. What do we need? What do we have? And how can we use what's happening in the world to propel that? So let's look at, as far as skills-based concern, do we need to be investing more in AI? Do we need to be investing more in big data? How can we translate the need for those digital skills into already existing gaps in the system right now to be able to plug into the development moving forward? So what are businesses going to need moving forward if we're going to try and build more of a contingency into startups or into the sector? How are we going to need to be doing funding or fundraising better, or fundraising differently? On how do we need to be doing business modeling differently? And this is about kind of engaging collective solutions and engaging the collective community in programs, getting people to share opinions, getting people to share the needs, getting people to share the skills that they have. You don't know who you have that can help you if you don't know who's around you, right? So it's being able to, now that people have had no choice but to be connected, use the time that they're now connected to get the data. The data is the insight. This is the important part of how to know what to engage people in based on what it is that we need. But it requires the connectedness. And like I say, data is the key that's going to unlock really what we're going to be able to do with beauty entrepreneurs and contribute to the beauty, even to the beauty industry as startups, but also just in general. I think insights inform you on where you need to innovate, where you need to push forward, but also where there is a gap where you need to reinvest more information or more attention. And you can apply this into any kind of industry. I'm going to apply it to beauty tech, but other people are going to apply it to ed tech, because education technology is just as important in terms of how do we get education out to people. Even in startup and entrepreneur development, the entrepreneurs that we have are entrepreneurs that are self-taught. They never learned business modeling. They never learned online ads. Now we're bringing them onto Facebook, not just as a social media platform, but as a marketing platform. How do you, in the simplest way possible, with the least amount of budget, get what you need across and find your customers and engage your customers and teach them customer relationship management? So really, it's an interesting time. It's an exciting time of figuring out who are the people, where do we find them, how do we engage their skills, but more importantly, how do we impart the skills that have been empowered through us by technology, and how do we empower them with the right technology to really be able to reach their customers, to build the sustainability of a career in their livelihoods, as well as to just really upskill and level up in the personal capacity, so that their children and the people in their communities really do know how to do better and how to move forward.
Thank you so much. Isaac, what do you think?
Okay, yeah, so sorry, let me quickly respond to the question that Matt asked earlier. I was going to talk about that before you came on, Yvette. So for me, he was talking about defining moments. So for me, I think it was based on my experiences growing up, the fact that I grew up in a low-income community and I saw the huge marginalization between the low-income communities and high-income. And so growing up with that experience, I thought that the opportunities that every child has should not be dependent on the status of their parents or where they live, because these were majorly the things that affected us. Because we lived in certain areas, we couldn't access some type of opportunity, we couldn't access some type of benefits that came from the government. And so growing up, I thought that can also help young people access technology education, because presently right now, not a lot of young people living in low-income communities in Nigeria even move a mouse. I have seen that. I've visited some villages, they don't even know what a mouse is. So this is one of the things that pushed me to do this. It was based on my own experience. So going back to your question, Yvette, about how to prepare, how young people can prepare in this period. So we need to prepare ourselves for the new normal. Honestly, this is not just a downtime for business. It's not just a downtime for businesses. It's a complete shift in the economic order. We need to think about a long-term impact. Sorry? Internet is gone.
You're good.
Please proceed, Isaac. We can hear you.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you, Isaac. Please go on. Please go ahead.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. It was showing connection failed here. So I was saying that we cannot say how long this is going to last, this new normal, but the truth is the COVID-19 situation requires that we prepare our mindset, our strategy, and our actions to execute effectively and also be ready for the shift when the situation requires it. So lastly, one of the things I'm going to say is that we need courage, we need power, we need resilience. And of course, I think it was Ayanda that was saying that Ayanda was talking about skills. Yeah, so we need to learn new skills and of course, learn new ways of doing things. One of them is organizing an online conference like this is a skill that is very relevant in today's world. There are people who are going to pay for you to organize programs like this. So there are lots of things happening. There are lots of new opportunities that the COVID-19 has presented to us. Myself, I'm beginning to, learn a lot of other things that I thought I probably didn't need, but now I'm learning new skills, adding to the things that I already know. So young people need to learn new skills and learn new ways of doing things. Learn the things that are relevant, especially online, things that you can do online. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deborah.
Right. I think that African young people in Africa are actually very fortunate. I'll say that we are actually very fortunate to be in Africa at a time like this, because this pandemic has opened us up to lots of possibilities of what is possible. We are seeing the agility of our governments. We are seeing that our governments and African countries are now producing things on their own because of the disruption that have happened in other parts of the world. We are becoming more self-reliant. And this is good news for we, the young people who are coming up, because we know that we are learning that we can lean on ourselves, we can look to ourselves. We are learning that we have the solutions to the problems that face us. We can come up with our own indigenous solutions to help ourselves. I think that moving forward, we just have to look at what is important to the to businesses, what's important to young people. I think that COVID-19 has exposed a lot of these things. We are seeing that human connection is very important. We are seeing that having empathy is very important, and we can work all these into the future models that we build for business. I think this is where stakeholder capitalism also comes in. We are not just looking at building profits. We're not just looking at how we can advance ourselves. We are looking at the well-being of the people we are working with, and we are looking at in the long term. We are looking at the long run at generations to come. How are we going to impact them with our work? We are looking at all those things. So COVID-19 has kind of exposed what's important, and because of this viewpoint that we have, now that we know what's important, we can now incorporate that into our work moving forward. And I think, as Ayanda said, it's also made us realize the importance of data, of having data, because that helps us expose the gaps. We now know where the gaps are, where the opportunities are, and what we can do to bridge these gaps, what we can do as these gaps are now sort of like business ideas. They are now ideas for us to contribute to our continent and to build. So I think that moving forward with all this information that we have from COVID-19, we are in a better position to build more resilient societies and nations. Thank you.
Definitely. I totally agree that we are in a much better position to build more resilient countries and ecosystems for ourselves as young people and also for our countries. But Amani, what do you think, for you coming from the formal sector, what are the skills that or the capabilities that young people need to have, especially whether they are in the entrepreneurial sector or not, to be able to ride this pandemic and prepare for life after this?
Thank you, Yvette. I also like to more like play back what other speakers have said, that skills is actually one of the things that currently we as young people, especially those who are in the corporate world, need to re-evaluate ourselves in a way that we have always been in the space where we have been told we need to start looking at new skills because technology is going to replace our jobs. But that has always been, like we have always think it's quite, 10, 15 years to come. But the COVID or the pandemic somehow brought it to now. So currently there are some of the jobs that are at risk in a way that if you're working from home, and probably because what happened in Tanzania is most of the employers decided to give leave days for people that their work they're not that important to the organization. So what I will say is the skills that we need to learn now need to align to what exactly is required for us to survive as well with technology, but also to survive with these changes that they happen because of COVID, but also to redefine what success is, because I think as young people, we have a lot of ambitions, and also it's a good thing, but at the same time, it can also act against us. So to redefine what is success looks like, so right now, staying safe and also trying to take precaution measures, like primary measures to protect yourself, that is success already. And the last thing is the power of small actions. For me, I'll always look at majority people in my cycle right now. They've realized that this was an opportunity for us to also change some of our behaviors. We, as the next generation, we need to shape our behavior so as we can be able to create that future that we want. So the power of small actions, and also try to question ourselves, what is it that truly matters and what is it that does not really matter.
Thank you, Shayo. I think I really, really connect with that statement you made, the power of small actions. So from my end, I have been stuck in Tunisia for almost 3 months now because AIESEC was organizing a regional conference, and when we got into the country, we eventually had to cancel because of the risk, but then we couldn't leave, my whole team and I. We've been here for almost 3 months now, and I have definitely realized how the power of small actions go a long way to change our behaviors, the way we look at the world, the way we think, the way we approach work, the way we want to shape ourselves to be better prepared for a life after this pandemic. And it's given me the opportunity to be more innovative, and that's something that everybody here has mentioned, being innovative in such a way that how do I connect more with my family and friends, and what are the things that we can do rather than talking all the time? How can we, come together, maybe form a book club, talk about issues that we face in our communities, in our countries, in the world, especially for young people from the continents? What can we do to shape our world? And I think that's really great. So the power of small actions really, really speaks to me, and I'm sure it does speak to everybody here, and connecting back to how this week has gone. I know that a lot of the things that have come up in the conversations is how we ourselves can be the change we desire to see in the world, in our environments, in our communities. So at this stage, I really want to thank all of you for making time to be here with us to have this space. So I'm just going to go to the audience or the participants. If you have any questions for us, and you'd like us to, answer, you want to know more about the continent, or there's something that you don't really understand, you can, put in the chat box, and we'll read and quickly discuss, because we don't have a lot of time now.
Matt, you want to come back in and see what part we should do next?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Georg. Thank you, Yvette, and to all our panelists today. What a fantastic and inspiring conversation. I will actually pass it along to Raji for some closing announcements. And just wanted to say again, thank you so much. Especially this last point about small actions. Some of these issues that we deal with can feel so big that in order to take self-responsibility, the power of small actions in our everyday life, supported by each other and our communities, is one of the most powerful things I've come across. So just wanted to share that. Thank you for everything from the bottom of our hearts, the work that you're doing in the world, coming and sharing your wisdom and your experiences today with us, with our global audience. These are intense times, and coming together in this way from all around the world to inspire and connect is tremendously hopeful. And so thank you from the bottom of our hearts. I'll pass it along to Raji now for some final announcements, and then we'll end with a few words from Jim. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Matt. Let me first begin by thanking the panel and Yvette. That was really wonderful. It was amazing to hear, your experiences, but also your very deep insights about humans in the places that you live, and how we can work together to help them in the best way possible. So thank you so much. I have a couple of announcements. One is just to say that the conversation, though it ends now in the next few minutes, doesn't end here. It continues on the Ubiverse, so I encourage anyone to join the Humanity Rising group on the Ubiverse, and you will be able to, begin conversations and build community. Finally, I'd like to give you a short preview of tomorrow. Tomorrow's session is titled Transformative Education and Intergenerational Wisdom Exchange. And it will be quite exciting for me and Matt and many of the others working at Ubiquity, because we'll have some of our own youth represented on the panel, as well as we'll have some representatives from a wonderful organization called Uplevels that works to empower youth and has a really interesting podcast, which we'll learn about tomorrow. So with that, my announcements are over, and I would like to hand over to Jim to take us home. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Raji. Thank you, Matt. And thank you, panel. I have to say, Yvette, it's been very gratifying for me to watch your masterful moderation today. Yvette and I met at an AIESEC conference in Romania. I think it was 2 years ago. And I was so impressed with her then that we have stayed in touch, and we reached out to her when Humanity Rising began to take shape to put together a panel of African voices. So I just want to thank you personally, Yvette. It's been a wonderful experience to just watch you convene your peers and to moderate so skillfully, even through the challenges of technology for the session today. I want to just take up in closing a point. I think it might have been you, Ananda, around the question of leadership, when I think you said that leadership is understanding that we're all agents of our own self-development. And I think that's actually a profound notion that's worth contemplating. You know, we often think of leadership as something we do in a group of others. Somehow we're leading the charge. And I think you've provided a deeper insight that true leadership is understanding that you are the agent of your own development. You know, there's an old saying that circumstances don't make a person, circumstances reveal a person. And when we come into these crises or opportunities, somehow, to Matt's question of what was the critical moment that kind of turned us on, something gets ignited in our deep interior. And it's when our deep interior is catalyzed into a transformational process, ultimately of conviction, that which we must do no matter what. That's when real leadership is galvanized. You know, referring back to Martin Luther King, in 1955, before Rosa Parks, there was a young Black woman named Claudette Davis who also refused to go to the back of the bus. And when Martin Luther King witnessed that and the commotion and what she was subjected to by the police and the courts, something was ignited in him that literally took over his life. That's what happened to Gandhi when at the age of 25, he answers the call of an Indian businessman he had never met while he was still in India. But there was something about the letter that he received that ignited in him such a powerful sense of justice that he traveled all the way from India to South Africa and took up that case. Mandela, when he joined the ANC, he was so convicted by the racial prejudice that he was a man possessed by the desire for equality and a free South Africa. It all happened when they were very young, the same ages as the young people today. So in closing, whatever age you are, whatever country you're from, whatever profession you're engaged in, what is it that wakes you up at 3 o'clock in the morning and grips your soul? What is it that you have to do? It's like Martin Luther before the Council of Worms in 1517, also a very young man in his late 20s. He had nailed the 95 Theses up on the church door in defiance of the church. They did everything they could to get him to stand down, threatened him in every way. And when he was hauled up to the Inquisition and they put all the pressure on him they possibly could, he wavered and asked for one night before he provided his answer. And the next day, before the assembled lords and masters of the church and medieval Germany. He stood up, looked the cardinal right in the eye, and he said, "Sir, here I stand. I can do no other." And he was convicted. And he was only spared because the Duke of Augsburg, as he was being taken away, spirited Martin Luther into hiding. And that ignited the Reformation. When we stand because we can do no other, our lives become instruments of divine purpose, and history is shaped thereby. And in the mysterious workings of the Spirit that guides the affairs of all humankind, synchronicities begin to appear that deliver us into our destiny. So thank you, everyone on the panel. Thank you, Yvette. Thank you all. We'll see you again tomorrow, same time, between 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock p.m. Central European Time, for the next panel of youth voices from around the world. Bye, everyone.